Welcome back, it's Smashboss here, and today I want to present another game that I made in Game Builder Garage. So this time I tried to create something like Guitar Hero. Basically it's a game about timed button presses. So you have all these objects that all go down at a constant speed. And as you can see, when they go down, they will all at some point hit one of these areas, and each of these areas is labeled with a different button on the controller. So as one of these objects goes through its corresponding area, you have to press the button that this area is labeled with in that time window where the object goes through this area. And these objects will, if their button press is timed correctly, then also play a note which will play a song if done correctly. So it might look even messier than the last game that I made. However, I think from the concept it's way simpler than last time, because actually all of these nodons right here are just the same logic, which is made out of not more than 4 nodons copied over 8 times, because you have 8 different buttons in this game. So anyway, let's start explaining the simple things again first. Once again, there's a world nodon somewhere in here that just makes sure that the world looks like something. Then what's also pretty simple is the spheres itself, which represent the notes that you have to play. All of them are just movable objects that move down at a constant speed, and this constant is defined right here, minus 4.25 in this case. So the reason why I use this wormhole instead of using the constant directly is that I can use the wormhole exit multiple times. So if I for each of those had used a constant nodon and then I decided to change the speed of the song, then I would have to change each of those constants, because otherwise the notes would go at different speeds, which would be weird. So that way I have one constant where I define the speed of the entire song, and that goes into this wormhole and gets carried over to basically all the notes in the entire song. So next we have this sensor down here which checks if a sphere touches it. That is basically the sensor for if you miss a note. So if you miss to press the button and the object has already traveled through, then it will hit this sensor at some point, and that will just trigger a retry. So that means you failed if you miss a note. And on this side right here, there is the game end logic. So here we count the number of destroyed spheres, because the way I did it, which I will explain later, is if you press the button at the right time, then the sphere will get destroyed, because otherwise it would also hit this one even if you did it right. So we count the number of destroyed spheres and compare it against the total number of spheres. So in this case it's 51. And once all the spheres have been destroyed, we know that the player has won the game. However, if we would immediately play a sound effect or a visual effect, that effect would still interrupt the last note of the song that we are playing. So in order for that note to play first, there's here a timer of 1 until these effects are played. And since then these effects also take some time, the time until the game actually ends is then again a bigger time than this one up here, in this case 3 seconds. So that's already all the basic stuff. And the rest of this is, as I said, also not as complicated as it looks, because it's mostly the same thing 8 times. So first of all, we have here these different buttons, of course, for each of those combinations of nodons. The button is a different one. So let's look at this one, which is, I think, the CL button. So basically what we are doing here is checking, do we press the button, and now this comes into play too. So each of those areas is made out of 3 parts. One, the label that just shows what button has to be pressed, one touch sensor that checks for spheres, and one destroy object sensor that will destroy spheres. So what we basically do is we look if we press the corresponding button and there's currently not a sphere in this area, so this sensor that checks is there a sphere here is not active. That means we pressed the button at the wrong time because there's no sphere in here. So all of those, which again is every time the same logic, all of those end up in this wormhole and also lead to an immediate retry. However, if we do press the button while a sphere is in this area, then it will trigger the object destroy nodon, which will then destroy the sphere, and it will also go into one of these nodons down here, and they are all the music nodons that will just play the right notes then. So we have basically all the notes in here that are used in the song. Also, since it's otherwise not that easy to hear because the explosion or the destruction of the sphere itself also makes some sound, I've increased the volume of all of those notes to 15, and that's basically the entire thing already. So as I said, it's not as complicated as the last game that I showed. However, this is basically just a simple concept that can be mixed up in a lot of different ways. I mean, first of all, you can of course arrange all the notes that fall down here in a different way to play a completely different song. However, you can also mix up the concept itself a little bit. For example, instead of just having this immediate retry whenever you miss a note, you could remove this sensor right here and just count the amount of destroyed notes and then divide it by this total number of notes to have some sort of accuracy that you can then show to the player when the song is over. So what you could, for example, also do is, instead of immediately retrying when you hit a button at the wrong time, you could instead also have some kind of global score that goes up. However, if you press a button at the wrong time, you get some points subtracted from that score. So there's definitely lots of ways that this simple concept can be rearranged and mixed up. So that's it for today, and I hope you enjoyed the video.